The ship drifted through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull glowing red-hot against the night sky. Inside the cramped cockpit, James Holt gripped the controls with weathered hands that had once guided the destiny of nations. Sweat beaded on his forehead as warning lights flashed across the alien console. The desert floor of Arizona rushed up to meet him, a vast expanse of darkness punctuated by cacti and rock formations. "I spent my life designing rockets for NASA," he muttered through clenched teeth, "but never imagined at 68 I'd be piloting one straight into the Arizona desert." The ship screamed as it tore through the lower atmosphere systems, failing one by one. Jim's military training kicked in. Assess, adapt, survive. He'd faced death before in cockpits and control rooms across decades of service. This was just another day at the office, albeit 150,000 feet above ground and plummeting fast. The impact came with a deafening roar. Metal twisted and groaned as the craft carved a half-mile trench through sand and stone before coming to rest against a mesa. Silence fell, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the distant howl of a coyote. Jim's consciousness faded in and out, his last thought, before blackness took him. How the hell had an old man like him ended up here? 3 days earlier, life had been blessedly ordinary. The sun beat down mercilessly on Jim's double-wide trailer, the air conditioning unit rattling in protest against the Arizona heat. Inside, surrounded by the comfortable clutter of a life well lived, Jim hunched over his workbench. His fingers still nimble, despite the arthritis, deftly manipulated the inner workings of a 1954 Zenith transoceanic radio. The walls around him told a story that few would believe. Faded photographs showed a younger Jim in mission control during Apollo, his steady voice guiding men to the stars. Other images captured his time aboard the USS Enterprise, the aircraft carrier that had been his home during his Navy service. Medals and commendations gathered dust in forgotten corners, accolades from a life that seemed to belong to someone else now. Retirement had come reluctantly, forced by bureaucracy rather than capability. NASA had no place for aging engineers when budgets tightened, regardless of their experience. So Jim had retreated to the desert where the night sky remained untainted by city lights, and a man could still feel close to the stars he'd spent his life reaching for. The radio crackled suddenly, interrupting the baseball game he'd been half listening to. Static pulsed in rhythmic bursts, unlike any interference he'd heard before. His engineer's curiosity piqued. Jim adjusted the dials, trying to clean up the signal. The pattern repeated. 3 long pulses, 2 short a pause, then again, not random static. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered, reaching for a notepad. As he scribbled down, the pattern memories of his Navy communications training surfaced. This wasn't just a pattern, it had the hallmarks of an encoded message. But from where Jim worked through the night, rigging an old satellite dish to boost the signal. By dawn, he'd connected the radio to his ancient desktop computer, running a homemade program to analyze the waveforms. The results made him sit back, heart pounding. The signal wasn't coming from Earth. Its point of origin lay somewhere beyond the moon, approaching rapidly. He rubbed his tired eyes, considering the possibilities. Equipment malfunction, government test, or something else entirely. Jim had spent too many years in classified programs to dismiss the extraordinary out of hand. The computer beeped, its ancient printer grinding to life. A series of coordinates spilled across the page, latitude, longitude, and a timestamp for 12 hours later. Whatever was broadcasting that signal was heading for Earth, for Arizona, for somewhere less than 20 miles from his trailer. Jim's hand hovered over his phone. The rational move would be to call his old contacts at NASA, at the Pentagon. But something stopped him. Decades in government service had taught him caution. If this was what he suspected, genuine contact from beyond Earth, then bureaucracy and military intervention might not be the best first response. Instead, he packed a bag, water, first aid kit, flashlights, his old service pistol. The habits of preparation never quite left a military man. He loaded everything into his battered Ford pickup and waited for nightfall, eyes fixed on the horizon where the coordinates pointed. The desert night enveloped Jim's truck as he navigated the rough terrain, headlights cutting through darkness. His GPS beeped as he approached the coordinates, nothing but empty desert visible in all directions. Then he saw it, a streak of light descending rapidly from the night sky, much too fast for a controlled landing. The object crashed less than a mile away, the impact sending a shockwave that rocked his truck. Jim killed the engine and lights military caution taking over. He grabbed his binoculars scanning the crash site. No government vehicles yet, but they wouldn't be far behind. Something that size hitting U.S. soil would trigger all kinds of sensors. He approached on foot, moving with the careful precision that belied his age. The crash site came into view. Not a meteor as he'd first thought, but something manufactured. The craft was sleek, roughly the size of a small airplane, its hull composed of a silvery material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. It was unmistakably not of Earth origin. Part of the hull had split open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Jim hesitated at the threshold, decades of science fiction movies, suggesting this might not be the wisest course of action. But curiosity had always been his defining trait. It had taken him from a farm boy to mission control, after all. The interior was surprisingly Earth-like in its layout. A cockpit with seats and controls, though the design was sleeker, more integrated than anything he'd seen. And there, slumped in what could only be the pilot's chair, was a figure. Jim approached cautiously, service pistol drawn more from habit than intention. The figure stirred slightly, and Jim froze. She looked surprisingly human, if humans had skin with a faint, silvery sheen and hair that seemed to shimmer like fiber optics. Her face could have graced any fashion magazine on Earth, save for the subtle differences: eyes slightly too large, cheekbones sharper than human norm, ears with a slight point. Blood, or something like it, iridescent and flowing, seeped from a wound on her temple. Jim holstered his pistol, medical training overriding everything else. "Easy there," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him, but hoping his tone conveyed peaceful intentions. "I'm going to help you." Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of deep violet that seemed to shift like oil on water. She spoke, her voice musical, but the language entirely foreign. Then, seeing Jim's confusion, she pressed a small device on her wrist. When she spoke again, her words came out in stilted but understandable English. "Human. Danger. Coming." Each word seemed to cost her effort. "Hide me." The sound of distant helicopters made the decision for him. Jim had worked with enough classified projects to recognize a government containment operation when he heard one. Whoever this was, he wasn't about to deliver her into a lifetime of dissection and interrogation. He helped her from their craft, surprised at how light she was despite being nearly his height. Her steps were unsteady, one leg clearly injured. Jim supported her weight as they made their way back to his truck, the sound of approaching helicopters growing louder. "Hold on," he told her as he gunned the engine, taking a back route through the desert he'd learned during his years living off the grid. The truck bounced over rough terrain, each jolt causing his passenger to wince. In his rearview mirror, Jim watched black helicopters descending on the crash site, powerful spotlights sweeping the desert floor. By dawn, they had reached his trailer. Jim helped the woman inside, settling her on his couch. In the light of day, her otherworldly nature was even more apparent. Her skin had a translucent quality, and what he had taken for blood was a fluid that shifted colors like a mood ring. "My name is Jim," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "Jim Holt." She studied him with those strange eyes, then touched her own chest. "Thalia." The translation device at her wrist beeped softly. "Thank you, Jim Holt, of Earth." Jim set about treating her wounds using his old military field medical kit. The cut on her temple wasn't deep, but the leg injury concerned him, a fracture by the look of it. As he worked applying butterfly bandages and fashioning a splint, questions burned in his mind. "What brought you here?" he asked, not expecting much of an answer given the language barrier. Thalia's device hummed, apparently processing his words. After a moment, she replied haltingly, "Escape, betrayal, warn." She gestured upward. "Stars, danger." Jim nodded, understanding the limitations of whatever translation technology she was using. "Rest now," he said. "We'll figure this out." Over the next few days, as Thalia recovered, communication grew easier. Her device seemed to learn English rapidly, and soon she was able to form complete, if somewhat formal, sentences. Jim kept the television and radio on, monitoring for news of the crash, but the silence was more telling than any announcement. Whatever had been found in the desert was now classified at the highest levels. On the third day, as they shared a simple meal, Thalia finally revealed her truth. "I am Thalia, daughter of Queen Seraphina of Astralis." she said, her voice gaining confidence with each word. My world lies 16 light years from your solar system, though our ships can traverse that distance in weeks using fold space technology. Jim listened, the engineer and him fascinated by the casual mention of faster-than-light travel, the retired intelligence officer in him evaluating her credibility. Everything about her, the technology, her physical differences, the crash, supported her claims. I fled because of Dravek, our supreme commander, she continued. He plans to overthrow my mother and seize power. But that is not the worst of it. Her violet eyes met Jim's. He intends to destroy Earth. Jim set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Why would he want to destroy us? We didn't even know you existed until you crashed in my backyard. Talia's expression shifted to something like regret. Your world has been observed for centuries. Some on our council see Earth as a threat. Your technology advances rapidly, especially in weaponry. Your space exploration capabilities are primitive now, but evolving. Dravek believes it is safer to eliminate potential competitors before they become true rivals. The implications settled heavily on Jim's shoulders. Humanity faced extinction at the hands of a civilization they didn't even know existed, all because they were developing too quickly for comfort. I need to return to Australis, Thalia said, rising despite her injured leg. I must warn my mother before Dravek acts. Your world has... She searched for the word billions of souls. I cannot allow their extermination. Jim ran a hand through his silver hair. Your ship is gone. The government has it now. Even if we could get it back, it looked pretty wrecked. Talia's lips curved in a slight smile. The ship you saw was merely a scout vessel, an escape pod from my actual craft. The main ship engaged its cloaking protocol and set down automatically when I ejected. She held up a small device that looked like an intricate bracelet. It awaits my signal, hidden in the mountains north of here. Jim's mind raced with implications. A cloaked ship of advanced design sitting in U.S. territory undetected by military sensors. The engineer in him marveled while the patriot worried. But the human in him recognized the stakes, one world against another. If you go back alone, will they believe you? This Dravek person has already made his move against you. Talia's expression darkened. You speak truth. Dravek has influence. My word alone may not be enough. Jim stood, decision made. Then I'm coming with you. An eyewitness from Earth might add weight to your warning. He saw the surprise in her alien eyes. I've spent my life building things that go to space. Might as well see what's out there myself before I die. The journey could be dangerous, Talia warned. Dravek has already sent hunter ships after me, and Australis is very different from Earth. Jim gestured to the photographs on his wall, younger versions of himself in mission control aboard aircraft carriers in distant deserts. Danger and I are old friends. Besides, I'm 68. How many more adventures am I likely to have? That night, they prepared to leave. Jim packed lightly, some clothes, medications, a few personal items, including his service pistol. It wouldn't do much against advanced alien technology, but its familiar weight was reassuring. As an afterthought, he added a flash drive containing his life's work, design innovations from NASA and the Navy that had never seen public release. Thalia activated her beacon, and they drove north into the mountains as darkness fell. The terrain grew rougher, forcing Jim to use his truck's four-wheel drive. Finally, they reached a plateau surrounded by towering pines, seemingly empty under the star-filled sky. We're here, Thalia announced, stepping from the truck. Jim looked around, seeing nothing but wilderness. Where's the... His words died as Thalia pressed a sequence on her wrist device. The air before them shimmered like heat haze, then parted to reveal a vessel unlike anything he'd seen before. It was roughly the size of a corporate jet, but with lines that seemed to flow rather than connect. Its surface had the same light-absorbing quality as the crashed scout ship, but on a grander scale. It's beautiful, Jim breathed, the engineer in him already cataloging design elements he couldn't begin to comprehend. It is a royal courier, Thalia said with pride, the fastest class of vessel in the Australis fleet. We can reach my homeworld in 12 Earth days. A panel slid open in the ship's side, revealing an entrance. Are you certain about this, Jim Holt? Once we leave your atmosphere, return becomes complicated. Jim looked back at his truck, this last tether to his life on Earth. He thought of his trailer in the desert, his quiet retirement, the years stretching ahead in lonely routine. Then he looked up at the stars. the frontier he'd helped others reach but never touched himself. I'm certain, he said, following Thalia into the ship. The interior was more spacious than he'd expected, with flowing contours instead of the hard angles found in human spacecraft. Lights activated, automatically glowing with a soft blue luminescence that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The cockpit contained two seats before a console that appeared to be part solid matter, part holographic display. Strap in, Thalia instructed, taking the pilot's position. Atmospheric exit can be turbulent. Jim buckled himself into the co-pilot's seat, noting that despite the alien design, the basic concept of safety restraints remained universal. The console came alive under Thalia's touch, displays filling with symbols he couldn't read but could somewhat interpret. Navigational data system status communications. Your government has detected us, Thalia announced, pointing to a flashing indicator. Military aircraft approaching, engaging countermeasures. The ship hummed a sound that seemed to resonate within Jim's bones rather than his ears. Outside the view screen, he watched fighter jets. F-35s, the latest in American air superiority, streaked past, clearly searching, but unable to see the cloaked vessel. Hold on, Thalia warned as her fingers danced across the controls. The ship rose vertically, smooth as an elevator, accelerating with such force that Jim felt pressed into his seat, despite the apparent inertial dampening. The night sky darkened from navy to black as they climbed, stars brightening without the interference of atmosphere. Earth's curvature became visible. Then the entire blue-white sphere came into view, growing smaller with each passing moment. Jim's breath caught in his throat. He'd spent his life helping others see this view, but experiencing it himself was beyond words. The moment of wonder was short-lived. Alarms blared through the cabin, displays flashing red. Hunter ships, Thalia explained grimly, hands moving rapidly over the controls. Dravek's forces followed me to Earth. They've been waiting in your solar system. The view screen shifted, showing three vessels approaching rapidly from the direction of the moon. They were larger than Thalia's ship, their design more angular, predatory. Military vessels, Jim asked, military training, kicking in, assessing threats and options. Yes, interceptors, faster than us in open space, but less maneuverable. Thalia's expression was grim. We must reach fold space before they close distance. The ship accelerated, pushing past the moon in minutes rather than days. The hunter ships gained regardless, weapon systems becoming visible as they drew closer. Can we fight back? Jim asked, looking for weapons controls. This is a diplomatic vessel, Thalia replied. It has defenses, but limited offensive capabilities. She pointed to a display showing a countdown. Fold space drive charging. We need 3 more minutes. A blast of energy streaked past their ship, close enough that the shields flared visible for a moment, a shimmering bubble of force. They're within weapons range, Jim observed unnecessarily. What can I do to help? Thalia gestured to a secondary console. Take auxiliary control. When I say reroute power from life support to shields. Jim studied the controls, finding them surprisingly intuitive despite their alien design. Decades of working with experimental systems had given him an engineer's instinct for technical interfaces. He located the power distribution panel and positioned his hands over it. Another blast hit them directly, the ship shuddering under the impact. Lights flickered and alarms intensified. Now, Thalia shouted. Jim diverted power as instructed, watching shield strength rise as life support dimmed. The air grew noticeably colder, but the next incoming blast dissipated more effectively against their reinforced defenses. 90 seconds to fold space, Thalia announced, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that sent them spinning between two hunter ships, forcing them to adjust course and briefly cease fire to avoid hitting each other. Jim's military background sparked recognition. They're hurting us, he observed. 3 ships in a pursuit pattern. They're not trying to destroy us, they're driving us towards something. Talia's expression confirmed his suspicion. A blockade formation, standard Australis military tactic. Her hands flew over the controls, adjusting their course. They anticipate our fold space vector. Can we jump somewhere else? Jim asked. Change destination. The drive is calibrated for Australis. Recalculating would take hours. Another blast rocked the ship. We don't have hours. Jim studied the tactical display, memories of naval strategy exercises surfacing. What if we don't run straight? What if we use Earth's gravity well to slingshot around and approach from a different angle? Thalia's violet eyes widened slightly. A gravitational assist. Yes, that could work. It would alter our approach vector enough to bypass their blockade. She glanced at him with newfound respect. Your species understands space combat better than our intelligence suggested. Not combat, Jim corrected as the ship banked sharply heading back toward Earth. Exploration. We've been using gravity assist since the Voyager missions. Sometimes the clever path is better than the powerful one. The Hunter ships adjusted course to follow, but their larger mass made the tight turn more difficult. The gap widened as Thalia's ship accelerated around Earth's curve using the planet's gravity to add velocity. 30 seconds to fold space, Thalia announced. The maneuver worked. Their blockade position is no longer relevant. The Hunter ships realized their error, accelerating desperately to close distance. Energy weapons fired continuously now, most missing as the range increased. 10 seconds, Thalia counted down. 9, 8. A final desperate shot from the lead Hunter ship grazed their stern, causing the entire vessel to buck violently. Jim was thrown against his restraints, pain lancing through his shoulder. Warning lights flashed across every display. Drive stability compromised. Thalia reported, fingers dancing across controls, attempting to compensate. 3, 2, 1. The view screen flared white as space itself seemed to fold around them. Earth, the moon, the Hunter ships, all vanished in a disorienting ripple of reality. Jim felt a sensation like being stretched and compressed. Simultaneously, his consciousness struggling to process the experience. When his vision cleared, they were elsewhere. No Earth, no familiar constellations, just the endless black of deep space punctuated by unfamiliar stars. A holographic display showed their course, a shimmering line stretching ahead toward a distant point of light. We made it, Thalia breathed, slumping slightly in her seat. The fold space transition was successful, though rough. We're on course for Australis. Jim rubbed his bruised shoulder, trying to process that he had just traveled farther from Earth than any human in history. How long until we arrive? 12 days, Thalia replied, checking diagnostics. The drive sustained damage. We're moving slower than optimal, and we'll need to drop out of fold space occasionally for cooling. But we'll reach Australis. Jim unbuckled his restraints, standing carefully in the artificial gravity. Then we have time. Time for you to tell me everything I need to know about your world, and time for me to explain exactly what Earth stands to lose if Dravek gets his way. Over the following days, as their ship hurtled through fold space, Jim and Thalia exchanged knowledge. She explained Australis, a world orbiting a binary star system with cities that floated on anti-gravity fields above a crystalline landscape. She described a civilization thousands of years ahead of Earth technologically, but socially rigid, bound by traditions that stretched back millennia. My mother, Queen Seraphina, has ruled for 2 centuries, Thalia explained as they shared a meal of synthesized food that tasted better than Jim had expected. She is progressive by our standards, interested in peaceful contact with other civilizations. Dravek and his faction believe expansion through conquest is safer. And where do you stand, Jim asked. Thalia's gaze turned distant. I was raised to believe in diplomacy and the value of diversity, but until I crashed on your world and experienced human kindness firsthand, these were abstract concepts. Her eyes met his. You could have captured me, turned me over to your authorities. Instead, you helped a stranger, an alien, at risk to yourself. Such behavior confirms what I've argued to the Council, that humanity deserves the chance to join the interstellar community on its own terms. Jim nodded, understanding the weight of what was at stake. On Earth, we have a saying, actions speak louder than words. Maybe what your council needs isn't just your testimony, but to see a human standing before them. It will be dangerous, Thalia warned again. Dravek will see you as proof of his arguments, that humans are advancing too quickly, already reaching toward the stars. Let him, Jim replied. I've spent my life reaching for the stars. I'm not about to stop now, especially when Earth's future depends on it. On the 10th day of their journey, disaster struck. They had dropped out of fold space for a scheduled cooling period when proximity alarms blared. A massive vessel materialized nearby, an Australis battlecruiser bearing Dravek's command insignia. They tracked us through fold space, Thalia said in disbelief. That should be impossible unless, her expression hardened, unless they had access to Royal Courier specifications. Dravek's influence reaches further than I feared. The battlecruiser dwarfed their small vessel, its weapons systems already powering up. A communication signal chimed on their console. "They're hailing us," Thalia said, hand hovering over the accept control. "If I refuse, they'll open fire." Jim settled into his seat. "Then we don't refuse. We talk. Delay. I've dealt with my share of military hardliners. They all love to gloat before they act." Talia accepted the transmission. The view screen flickered, revealing a stern-faced male Astralis. Like Thalia, he appeared mostly human, but with more pronounced differences. Sharper features, skin with a metallic undertone, eyes that gleamed like burnished copper. "Princess Thalia," the figure said, voice resonating with authority. "Your unauthorized departure from Astralis, your flight to a quarantined world, and your theft of a royal vessel constitute high treason. By authority of the Military Council, I am placing you under arrest." Talia stood straight, every inch the royal despite her injuries. "Supreme Commander Dravek, your actions constitute the true treason. I've uncovered your plot against my mother and against Earth. The Council will hear my evidence." Dravek's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked to Jim with cold interest. "You've brought one of them with you. How unfortunate. This only confirms the danger these creatures present. Already they seek to infiltrate our society." Jim stood, stepping into view beside Thalia. "I'm not infiltrating anything. I'm James Holt, citizen of Earth, and I'm here to speak for my planet against your unprovoked aggression." A flash of surprise crossed Dravek's features before his mask of control returned. "A human that speaks. How novel. Regardless, you are both to power down your vessel and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with lethal force." The transmission cut abruptly. Jim turned to Thalia. "Options." She moved to the controls, fingers flying. "The Fold space drive needs another hour of cooling before safe activation. We can't outrun them conventionally." She pulled up a star chart. "There's a dense asteroid field in this system. If we can reach it, their larger ship will have difficulty following. Like a destroyer chasing a PT boat into shallow waters," Jim mused. At Thalia's questioning look, he added, "Earth naval history. Big ships can't go where small ships can." "Precisely," Thalia confirmed, already adjusting course. Their ship accelerated toward the asteroid field, the battlecruiser giving immediate pursuit. Energy weapons lanced out, most missing, as Thalia executed evasive maneuvers, but one blast clipped their stern, sending damage warnings blaring throughout the cockpit. "Engine efficiency down to 60%, Thalia reported grimly. "We'll still reach the asteroids, but with less maneuvering capability than I'd like." The field loomed ahead, thousands of rocky bodies, ranging from car-sized to mountain-sized, all tumbling in chaotic orbits. Thalia guided their vessel into the field, immediately weaving between two massive asteroids, with barely meters to spare on either side. Jim gripped his seat as the ship twisted and dove through gaps that seemed impossibly small. Behind them, the battlecruiser was forced to slow its bulk, preventing the same tight maneuvers. "It's working," Jim observed, watching the tactical display. "They're falling behind." "Yes," Thalia agreed, "but they don't need to follow precisely." She pointed to where smaller craft were launching from the battlecruiser. "Hunter ships. They're sending their equivalent of fighter craft to flush us out." The hunter ships, similar to those that had chased them from Earth, zipped into the asteroid field, their smaller size allowing them to navigate the chaos more easily. "We need somewhere to hide," Jim said, studying the sensor readings. His eyes locked onto a particularly large asteroid with deep crevices. "There. That one has fissures large enough for our ship, but too small for theirs. If we can power down and hide our energy signature." Talia nodded, already adjusting course. "A sound strategy." Their ship dove toward the massive asteroid, slipping into a deep crack in its surface, just as the hunter ships rounded a nearby rock formation. Inside the fissure, Thalia cut power to all non-essential systems. The lights dimmed to emergency levels, and the constant hum of the engines faded to silence. They waited, breath held, as the hunter ships passed overhead, sensors sweeping but detecting nothing through the thick mineral deposits in the asteroid. "How long until the Fold space drive cools enough to use?" Jim whispered, though there was no logical reason to lower his voice in the vacuum of space. 43 minutes, Thalia replied, equally quiet. "But once we activated it, they'll detect the energy surge immediately." Jim considered their predicament. We need a distraction, something to draw their attention elsewhere when we make our jump. He studied the sensor readings of the asteroid field. If we could cause a chain reaction collision among some of these rocks, Talia's eyes lit with understanding. Our emergency beacon. If we jettison it toward that unstable cluster and detonate it remotely, it could trigger exactly such a reaction, giving us just enough chaos to mask our fold space activation. Jim finished nodding. Let's do it. They worked quickly programming the emergency beacon and loading it into a launch tube designed for communication probes. When the hunter ships moved to the far side of the asteroid in their search pattern, Thalia launched the beacon toward a densely packed cluster of smaller asteroids several kilometers away. The minutes ticked by tensely as they waited for the beacon to reach position. Hunter ships continued to prowl the asteroid field, drawing ever closer to their hiding spot. Drive cooling complete, Thalia announced finally. Ready for fold space activation on your mark. Jim watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment. The beacon was in position, the hunter ships clustered on the far side of their hiding place. Now, he said. Thalia detonated the beacon remotely. The explosion itself was small, but its effect cascaded as planned. Asteroids collided with increasing frequency, each impact triggering more collisions in a spreading wave of destruction. The hunter ships immediately diverted to investigate the disturbance. Fold space drive activating, Thalia announced, hands dancing across the controls. The ship hummed back to life, energy signatures building rapidly. One of the hunter ships turned back toward them, sensors apparently detecting their power-up sequence. It accelerated in their direction, weapons charging. 5 seconds to fold space, Thalia counted down. 4, 3. The hunter ship fired a blast of energy streaking toward them. At the same moment, the fissure they'd hidden in began to collapse, rock walls crushing inward as the asteroid itself was caught in the chain reaction they'd triggered. 2, 1. Space warped around them just as energy blast and crushing stone converged on their position. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring, but the fold space transition completed. They'd escaped, barely. Jim released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Did we lose them? Thalia checked the sensors. Yes, but not without cost. The fold space drive is severely damaged. We'll reach Australis, but we'll be coming in hot. Her violet eyes met his. Very hot. The damage was worse than initial readings had indicated. As they approached Australis 2 days later, their ship barely holding together in fold space, Thalia laid out their situation bluntly. Controls are failing. When we exit fold space, we'll have minimal maneuvering capability and no way to properly decelerate. We're essentially going to crash onto Australis. Jim examined the engineering schematics she'd pulled up. If we route auxiliary power to the inertial dampeners and structural integrity fields, we might survive the impact. Not comfortable, but survivable. And if we aim for the crystalline plains, rather than the floating cities, we'll minimize risk to the population, Thalia added. But Dravek will have alerted planetary security. The moment we appear on their sensors, they'll dispatch forces to the crash site. Jim considered their options. So we need to crash, survive, and then evade capture long enough to reach your mother. He couldn't help a slight smile. Reminds me of missions in my younger days, though usually we had a bit more backup. Talia returned the smile, her first genuine one since their narrow escape. You are a remarkable human, Jim Holt. Most beings would be terrified. Oh, I'm terrified, Jim assured her. I'm just too old to let it stop me. As they prepared for their violent arrival on Australis, Jim found himself reflecting on the strange path his life had taken. From farm boy to NASA engineer to Navy officer to retiree, and now to become the first human to set foot on an alien world, albeit in a crash landing while being hunted by its military. Not how he'd imagined first contact would go, but then reality seldom matched the clean scenarios of mission planning. The ship shuddered around them as fold space began to collapse. Through the view screen, Jim caught his first glimpse of Australis, a world of breathtaking beauty with twin suns casting dual shadows across a landscape that seemed carved from crystal and light. Floating cities hovered above the surface, their architecture fluid and organic, connected by bridges of what looked like solidified light. Beautiful, he whispered. Home, Thalia replied, hands working the failing controls. Brace for exit from fold space. The transition was violent, the damaged drive giving out completely as normal space reasserted itself. Alarms blared throughout the ship as they plummeted toward the planet's surface atmosphere, creating a fiery cocoon around their vessel. The control systems flickered and died, leaving them in a free fall toward the crystalline landscape below. "Hold on!" Thalia shouted over the roar of the atmospheric entry. Jim gripped his seat restraints, muscles tensing in anticipation of impact. The last thing he saw before the crash was the shimmering surface of Australis rushing up to meet them, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Then darkness. Consciousness returned to Jim in painful fragments. First came sound, the hiss of escaping pressure, the crackle of electrical shorts. Then sensation, the bite of restraints against his chest, a warm trickle of blood from his forehead. Finally, sight emergency lights bathing the shattered cockpit in crimson. The ship had come to rest at an angle half buried in crystalline soil that glittered like diamond dust through the cracked view screen. "Thalia." His voice emerged as a rasped throat dry from the smoke filling the cabin. A groan answered him from the pilot's seat. Thalia stirred her silvery skin, now marred with iridescent bruises. "Still alive," she managed. "Your suggestion about the inertial dampeners was effective." Jim released his restraints, wincing as pain lanced through his ribs. Probably cracked, but not broken, he'd suffered worse during carrier landings gone wrong. He helped Thalia free herself, noting her left arm hung awkwardly. "Dislocated shoulder," he diagnosed. "I can reset it, but it's going to hurt." "Do it," she commanded, jaw set. Jim positioned himself as he'd been taught in Navy medical training, gripped her arm, and with one smooth motion popped the joint back into its socket. Thalia hissed but didn't cry out, her discipline impressive. "Thank you," she said after a moment, testing the arm's movement. "We need to move," Jim said, glancing at the external sensors that still function. "How long before Dravek's forces arrive?" Thalia checked the one working console. "Minutes. They've already dispatched hunter ships to our position." She reached beneath her seat, retrieving a small pack and what appeared to be a weapon. "Emergency supplies and a defensive stinger." "Not much, but better than nothing." Jim gathered his own bag, secured from Earth, now containing everything he owned in this alien world. The irony wasn't lost on him. At 68, he'd been reduced to the same meager possessions he'd had as a young Navy recruit. "Which way to your mother?" Thalia activated a small holographic map. "The Royal Citadel floats above the Crystal Sea 40 kilometers east, but we'll never reach it on foot before being captured." She pointed to a closer structure. "There's a transport hub 10 kilometers south. If we can reach it and blend with the local population." A distant whine cut through the air, approaching aircraft. Time had run out. "Let's go," Jim urged, forcing open the damaged exit hatch. They emerged onto the crystalline plains of Australis, and despite their dire situation, Jim found himself momentarily awestruck. The ground beneath his feet wasn't soil, but a lattice of crystal formations that sang faintly with each step. Twin suns hung in a lavender sky, casting dual shadows behind every object. In the distance, cities floated like islands in the air, connected by gossamer bridges that seemed too delicate to support weight. "It's incredible," he breathed. "Later, Jim," Thalia urged, tugging his arm. "The crystal forest is our best chance for cover." They ran or hobbled quickly toward a grove of crystalline structures, resembling trees, their translucent branches reaching 20 meters into the sky. Above, the whine of engines grew louder as hunter ships crested the horizon, searchlights piercing the alien twilight. The forest provided some camouflage light, refracting through crystal trunks, creating misleading shadows and false readings. They pushed deeper, Jim ignoring the protests of his aging joints, following Thalia's lead through the alien terrain. The hunter ships circled overhead, unable to land among the dense crystal formations, but unwilling to abandon their search. "We need to keep moving," Thalia whispered as they paused for breath beside a towering crystal spire. "Night falls quickly on Australis. If we can reach the transport hub by darkfall, we might secure passage to the Citadel." Jim nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. The twin suns made the temperature uncomfortably warm for him, though Thalia seemed unaffected. "What's our cover story? I'm not exactly inconspicuous." Thalia studied him thoughtfully. "Outer colony visitor. Some of our distant settlements have developed cultural and physical variations. Keep your head down, stay close to me, and let me do the talking." They resumed their trek through the crystal forest, each step carrying them further from the crash site. The forest itself seemed alive in ways Jim couldn't quite define. Sometimes he caught glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, only to find nothing when he turned. The crystal trees occasionally emitted harmonic tones when brushed against, creating an ethereal symphony around them. The forest is semi-sentient, Thalia explained, noticing his fascination. Not conscious as you understand it, but responsive to presence and emotion. It's been known to hide those it deems unthreatening. Is that why the hunter ships haven't found us yet? Partly, she confirmed. It's also why Dravek's forces haven't simply bombarded the area. The crystal forests are sacred to our people. As twilight deepened, the forest revealed another wonder. The crystal structures began to glow from within, illuminating their path with soft blue radiance. It was beautiful, but also meant they cast more visible shadows. They would need to be more cautious. After several hours of careful navigation, the trees thinned, revealing their destination. The transport hub resembled a massive lotus flower made of light and crystal, hovering 2 meters above the ground. Streams of Australis citizens flowed in and out along glowing pathways, some accompanied by what appeared to be floating luggage. Jim's heart sank. Every person he could see shared Thalia's silvery skin tone and fluid grace. He would stand out immediately. "This won't work," he muttered. "I might as well be wearing a sign saying human here." Thalia's expression remained determined. "Wait." She rummaged in her pack, extracting a small device that resembled a compact mirror. "Emergency appearance modulator. It won't change your actual physiology, but it projects a light field that alters how others perceive you." She pressed the device to Jim's chest where it adhered to his shirt. A subtle vibration passed through him, followed by a sensation like static electricity dancing across his skin. "How do I look?" he asked. "Still like yourself to me, since I know the field is there. But to others," she smiled slightly, "a somewhat distinguished Australis elder from the outer colonies." Jim raised an eyebrow. "Elder, your white hair is actually an advantage. On Australis, it's a sign of wisdom. Few live long enough to achieve it naturally." They approached the transport hub, cautiously joining the flow of citizens. Jim kept his head down, mimicking the posture and gait of those around him as best his aching body allowed. The disguise seemed to be working. No one gave him more than a passing glance. Inside the hub, they faced their next challenge. The transport system required identification to board, and Thalia's royal credentials would trigger immediate alerts. "Now what?" Jim whispered. Thalia surveyed the crowded terminal, her eyes settling on a maintenance access way. "Follow me. Act like you belong." They slipped through a side passage used by service personnel, Thalia nodding confidently to actual workers they passed. Her royal bearings served them well. No one questioned their presence. They emerged onto a loading platform where cargo and supplies were being transferred to various transports. There, Thalia pointed discreetly to a sleek vessel being loaded with ornate containers. "Royal Provisioning Transport. It returns to the Citadel after delivering supplies to the outer regions. If we can get aboard." Jim assessed the situation with a tactical eye. 2 guards, 4 loaders. The guards are alert, but the loaders look tired end of their shift. We need a distraction. Talia reached into her pack again, extracting a small, crystalline sphere. "Harmonic disruptor. It will temporarily interfere with the crystal resonance fields, meaning mild disorientation for anyone within 20 meters. Nothing harmful, but confusing." Jim nodded. "That'll work. I'll circle around to approach from the other side once you activate it." Talia pressed a sequence on the sphere and rolled it beneath a nearby loading vehicle. 30 seconds later, it pulsed with light. Immediately, the workers and guards stumbled, looking around in confusion as their equilibrium faltered. Jim moved quickly despite his age, slipping behind stacked cargo containers and making his way to the transport's rear loading ramp. He ducked inside just as Thalia appeared from another direction, smoothly joining him in the cargo hold. They concealed themselves behind large supply crates as the effects of the disruptor faded and normal operations resumed. The loading continued for another 20 minutes before the ramp sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Engines hummed to life, and Jim felt the subtle shift as the transport lifted from the platform. "We made it," he whispered, allowing himself to relax marginally. "The first step," Thalia cautioned. "The journey to the Citadel takes approximately 2 hours. Once there, we'll face far greater challenges." Jim settled back against a crate, finally able to take stock of his injuries. His ribs ached, his knee had swollen to twice its normal size, and the cut on his forehead had crusted over with blood. He'd been running on adrenaline and military training, pushing through pain with the discipline of a man who'd seen worse. You need medical attention, Thalia observed, noticing his condition for the first time in adequate light. I'll manage, Jim assured her. Not my first crash landing. He attempted a smile that turned into a grimace, though usually with more parachute involvement. Talia extracted a small tube from her pack, squeezing clear gel onto her fingertips. Bioregenerative compound. It won't heal everything, but it will accelerate the process and reduce pain. She applied the gel to his forehead first, the substance cool, then warm against his skin. Almost immediately, the throbbing subsided. She moved to his knee, next the relief there even more profound. That's remarkable, Jim said as mobility returned to his joint. Your medical technology alone would revolutionize healthcare on Earth. Another reason Dravek fears your kind, Thalia said softly, your adaptability. Give humans a single advancement, and within a generation you'll have developed a dozen applications we never considered. The transport cruised smoothly through the Australis sky, occasionally banking around floating structures or passing other vessels. Jim peered through a small viewport, watching the alien landscape unfold beneath them. Crystal formations gave way to what appeared to be cultivated fields glowing with bioluminescent crops, then to settlements of increasing sophistication. Why do your cities float? He asked, genuinely curious despite their predicament. The crystal substrata contains energy fields that can be harnessed for levitation, Thalia explained. Long ago, we discovered that building on the surface disrupted these fields, causing ecological imbalance. By constructing our cities to hover above, we maintain harmony with the planet. The engineer in Jim was fascinated. Sustainable anti-gravity. NASA theorized about such technology, but we never came close to implementing it. As they spoke, the transport began its approach to the Royal Citadel. Through the viewport, Jim caught his breath at the sight. Unlike the other floating cities they'd passed, the Citadel was a masterpiece of crystalline architecture, spires and domes, capturing the light of the twin suns and refracting it in patterns too complex to follow. The entire structure hovered above what appeared to be an ocean of liquid crystal waves rippling with inner light. The seat of Australis governance for 10,000 years, Thalia said, pride evident in her voice. And my home. The transport docked at a service platform, workers immediately beginning to unload supplies. Jim and Talia remained hidden, waiting for the right moment to slip away unnoticed. When the majority of cargo had been removed and the workers stepped away for a shift change, they made their move, emerging from the hold and blending with the general activity of the platform. The royal chambers are in the central spire, Thalia murmured, guiding Jim through service corridors with practiced ease. But security will be highest there, and especially with Dravek's influence spreading. Jim noticed the change in an atmosphere as they moved deeper into the Citadel. Even in the utilitarian service areas, everything possessed an ethereal elegance. Walls that appeared solid would occasionally ripple with light or part automatically as they approached. Gravity seemed lighter, each step carrying them slightly further than expected. We need to reach my private chambers first, Thalia continued. I have secure communication access there that can't be monitored. We can contact allies within the court. They turned a corner and froze. Ahead, two guards in the distinctive armor of Dravek's military elite blocked their path. The guards stiffened, immediately recognizing Thalia despite her attempt to appear casual. Princess Thalia, one stated flatly, Supreme Commander Dravek has ordered your detainment upon return. You are to come with us. Thalia straightened royal authority, replacing her cautious demeanor. On whose authority does the military presume to detain a member of the royal family? Only my mother commands such power. The guards exchanged glances. The Queen Mother has been indisposed. The Supreme Commander acts with the Military Council's blessing. Jim's tactical assessment was immediate. Indisposed meant Serafina was being controlled or contained. Dravek's coup was further along than they'd feared. I see, Thalia said, her tone glacial. Then as Princess Regent, in my mother's indisposition, I countermand those orders. The guards tensed hands, moving to weapons at their sides. Forgive us, Princess, but our orders come directly from the Supreme Commander. Jim sensed the situation deteriorating rapidly. His hand inched toward the pocket containing his service pistol, useless against their advanced armor, but instinct died hard. The standoff broke unexpectedly when a new figure rounded the corner behind the guards, a younger Australis female in the flowing robes of court staff. Her eyes widened upon seeing Thalia, but instead of raising alarm, she immediately dropped into a formal bow. Princess, thank the dual light you've returned. The Queen Mother asks for you constantly. The guards turned, partially caught between protocols. The distraction was slight, but sufficient. Thalia's hand moved to her wrist device, pressing a sequence of controls. The corridor lights flickered momentarily, then stabilized. One guard began, then stumbled, his companion following suit. Both collapsed to the floor unconscious. Local security override, Thalia explained as the court attendant rushed forward. It temporarily disrupts neural functions in anyone not keyed to royal biosignatures. They'll recover in 20 minutes. Princess, the situation is dire, the attendant said urgently. I'm Lyra, your mother's personal attendant. She sent me to monitor the service docks on the slim chance you might return through unofficial channels. My mother's condition, Thalia demanded. Confined to her chambers under health protocols, Lyra replied, making a gesture that clearly indicated skepticism. Dravek has positioned his people throughout the Citadel. The military council convenes tomorrow to formally transfer emergency powers to him. Jim stepped forward. How many guards at the Queen's chambers? Lyra startled at his appearance, eyes widening. You're not Astralis. This is Jim Holt, Thalia introduced, a human from Earth and my ally. Answer his question. Recovering quickly, Lyra replied, 4 guards at all times, rotated every 6 hours. They allow only approved medical staff entry, all of whom are Dravek's people. Jim nodded, military assessment continuing. And Dravek himself, the command spire, he rarely leaves, conducting most business via holographic presence. We need to secure your mother first, Jim advised Thalia. Without her authority, we're just fugitives making accusations against the military commander. Thalia agreed. Lyra, can you guide us through service passages to my chambers? I need to retrieve something before we attempt to reach my mother. Of course, Princess, follow me. They dragged the unconscious guards into a nearby storage alcove, then followed Lyra through increasingly narrow maintenance quarters. These passages, designed for service drones and emergency access, bypass the main security systems of the Citadel. The diplomatic quarter is less heavily monitored, Lyra explained, as they emerged into a more elegant corridor. Dravek focuses his surveillance on military and governance sections. Talia's chambers were located in a quiet wing reserved for royal family. Lyra checked the corridor before ushering them quickly inside. The rooms beyond were spacious and elegantly appointed walls, seemingly composed of solid light that shifted subtly with atmospheric conditions. Large windows offered breathtaking views of the crystal sea far below. I need 5 minutes, Thalia told them, disappearing into an inner chamber. Jim used the time to study the Citadel layout visible through the windows. Military training had taught him to immediately identify defensive positions, escape routes, and potential choke points in any new environment, and the Citadel's design was both beautiful and practical. From a security perspective, limited access points, clear lines of sight, defensible positions. You're not what I expected, Lyra said, watching him curiously. From Earth, you mean? From any world. Our studies suggest most non-Astralis species are less evolved. Jim smiled slightly. We're full of surprises. That's what scares your supreme commander. Thalia returned now, dressed in formal attire that marked her royal status unambiguously. A circlet of crystal rested on her brow, and she carried what appeared to be a small scepter. Royal regalia, she explained, seeing Jim's questioning look. Not merely decorative. The circlet contains communication technology keyed exclusively to royal biosignatures. The scepter, she hesitated. It's a weapon of last resort. You believe it will come to that? Lyra asked, alarmed. I hope not, but Dravek has already moved against the Queen. We must be prepared for resistance. Thalia activated her circlet, a subtle glow emanating from the crystal. I'm attempting to contact my mother directly. If her circlet is nearby. A moment passed in tense silence before Thalia's expression brightened. Mother, can you hear me? Another pause. Yes, I've returned. I have evidence of Dravek's treason. She listened intently. I understand. We're coming to you now. She deactivated the communication. She's conscious but weakened. Dravek has been administering drugs disguised as medical treatment, keeping her disoriented. She's managed to hide her circlet from the guards. She confirms Dravek plans to announce her voluntary abdication at tomorrow's council meeting. Then we have until morning to restore her and expose Dravek, Jim summarized. How do we get past her guards? Thalia turned to Lyra. The service passage behind the Queen's bathing chamber. Is it still accessible? Yes, Princess. It's used for maintenance of the water purification systems, but it's narrow and hasn't been used in some time. It will serve our purpose. Talia retrieved a small device from a hidden compartment in her chambers. Neural disruptor more targeted than the override I used earlier. It will allow us to incapacitate the guards without raising alarms. Jim nodded approvingly. Get close, take them out quietly, secure the Queen. Classic extraction operation. Lyra led them back into the maintenance corridors, navigating a complex path through the Citadel's inner workings. These passages were clearly not designed for regular use, narrow, dimly lit, and occasionally requiring them to crouch or climb past infrastructure components. For Jim, with his injuries and age, it was an uncomfortable journey, but he pushed through without complaint. He'd endured worse in service to his country. He could endure this in service to his planet. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, Lyra stopped at a junction. The access panel ahead leads to the Queen's bathing chamber. The chamber itself connects to her bedroom. The guards are stationed at the main entrance on the opposite side. Talia thanked her. Return to your regular duties. If we're discovered, I don't want you implicated. But Princess, that's an order, Lyra. You've already risked enough. Once Lyra departed, Thalia turned to Jim. Ready? He nodded grimly, adrenaline pushing away fatigue and pain. After you, Your Highness. Talia carefully opened the access panel, revealing a spacious chamber beyond. Steaming pools of liquid that wasn't quite water glowed with soft luminescence, casting rippling patterns across crystal walls. The chamber was empty, the Queen apparently confined to her bed. They moved silently through the bathing area to an ornate doorway leading to the royal bedchamber. Thalia peered through, then pulled back to whisper to Jim. 2 guards inside, 2 outside. My mother is in bed, appears semi-conscious. The inner guards are monitoring her directly. Jim considered their options. The neural disruptor, what's its range and area of effect? 5 meters roughly conical spread. It will affect anyone in the targeted direction. Can your mother withstand its effects in her condition? Thalia frowned. Uncertain. The drugs already in her system might interact unpredictably. Then we need precision. Take out the inner guards first quickly before they can alert the ones outside. I'll watch the door to the corridor. Talia nodded, adjusting the settings on the neural disruptor. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They moved with synchronized purpose, Jim taking position near the main door while Thalia strode confidently into the bedchamber. The guards turned in surprise, but before they could react, she activated the disruptor. A wave of energy, invisible but distorting the air, slightly washed over them. Both guards stiffened, then collapsed unconscious. Jim checked the main door, still closed, no indication the outer guards had heard anything. He moved to the bed where Queen Seraphina lay. Even in her weakened state, the resemblance to Thalia was striking, though the Queen's features were more angular, her skin bearing a golden undertone rather than silver. Her eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning as she saw her daughter. Thalia, she whispered, voice frail but regal. You've returned. Mother. Thalia knelt beside the bed, taking the Queen's hand. What has Dravek done to you? Systematic suppression, Seraphina managed. Neural inhibitors, disguised as treatment for diplomatic fatigue. Jim kept watch on the door while mother and daughter spoke quietly. He could hear the outer guards occasionally shifting position or exchanging brief comments, unaware of the situation inside. We need to move her, he said after a moment. Those guards will be checking in or changing shift eventually. Talia nodded, helping her mother to a sitting position. Mother, this is Jim Holt of Earth. He helped me escape Dravek's forces and returned to warn you. Seraphina's eyes, the same violet as her daughter's, but deeper with age and wisdom, studied Jim with surprising clarity despite her drugged state. A human, here, in the Citadel. She smiled faintly. How Dravek must be seething. Your Majesty, Jim bowed, slightly military respect for legitimate authority ingrained after decades of service. We need to get you somewhere safe until you can address the council. My private sanctuary, Seraphina suggested, beneath the central spire. Only those of royal blood can access it. Can you walk, Mother? Thalia asked, concerned. With assistance, the Queen affirmed, struggling to her feet. A complication arose immediately. Serafina was dressed in a diaphanous sleeping garment, hardly suitable for moving through the citadel, even via service corridors. Thalia quickly retrieved a robe from a nearby wardrobe, helping her mother into it. The outer guards, Jim reminded them. We need to neutralize them before they realize something's wrong. Talia considered the problem. Mother, do you have strength to summon them? A request for water, perhaps? Serafina nodded, moving shakily to the door with Thalia's support. Jim positioned himself to the side out of immediate sight, but ready to act. The Queen pressed a communication panel. Guard, she called, her voice impressively steady despite her condition. I require water. A brief pause followed before the door slid open. One guard stepped inside, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty, I'll have water brought immediately. He froze, spotting Thalia. His hand moved toward his weapon, but too late. Thalia had already activated the neural disruptor, dropping him where he stood. The second outer guard, alerted by his companion's sudden silence, appeared in the doorway. What's happened? Jim struck him from the side, decades-old combat training, guiding his movements despite his age. A precise blow to the guard's neck just below the helmet, not enough to cause permanent damage, but sufficient to disrupt blood flow to the brain momentarily. The guard collapsed unconscious. Efficient, Thalia commented, eyebrow raised. Navy training, Jim explained. Some skills you never forget. With all four guards incapacitated, they faced their next challenge, moving through the citadel to the Queen's sanctuary without being detected. The royal circlets provided some advantage, allowing Thalia to monitor security movements through the citadel systems, but Dravek's forces were numerous and alert. The diplomatic reception begins in 30 minutes, Serafina informed them as they prepared to move. Most of the court will be attending, including Dravek, who must maintain appearances. A distraction, Jim suggested. If we could trigger a security alert in another part of the citadel. The archives, Thalia said suddenly. Mother, your authorization code can initiate an automatic containment protocol in the historical archives. A false data breach. Serafina nodded. Yes, that would draw security resources. From here, I can access the system. She moved to a crystalline panel near her bed, pressing her palm against it. The surface illuminated, displaying symbols Jim couldn't read. The Queen entered a complex sequence, then stepped back. Done. Containment protocols will activate in 5 minutes. They used the time to prepare. Thalia helped her mother into more practical clothing, while Jim checked the unconscious guards, ensuring they would remain subdued long enough for their escape. He also appropriated one guard's communication device, which might provide useful intelligence. Precisely 5 minutes later, alarms sounded throughout the citadel, not blaring klaxons, as would be used on Earth, but a harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the crystal structure itself. Through the windows, Jim could see security forces moving with purpose toward the southern spires. Now, Thalia urged. They exited the Queen's chambers through the bathing room, returning to the service corridors that had granted them access. With Serafina between them, they navigated the narrow passages, descending deeper into the Citadel's infrastructure. The Queen's sanctuary was located at the convergence point of the Citadel's crystal matrix, directly beneath the central spire. As they approached, the service corridors widened into more formal passages, though still clearly not meant for regular traffic. The entrance requires royal blood, Serafina explained as they reached what appeared to be a solid crystal wall. Literally, she pressed her palm against the surface, a small crystalline needle extending to pierce her skin. A drop of golden-hued blood was absorbed into the crystal, which immediately began to resonate. The seemingly solid wall rippled like water, parting to reveal a chamber beyond. They stepped through quickly, the entrance sealing behind them. The sanctuary was smaller than Jim had expected, but undeniably beautiful. The walls were transparent crystal that somehow maintained complete privacy, offering views of the Citadel's inner workings, energy, flows and data streams visualized as rivers of light. We're safe here for now, Serafina said, sinking gratefully onto a cushioned bench. No one can enter without royal blood, and the sanctuary is shielded from all monitoring. Jim looked around, assessing. How long until they realize you're missing? The next scheduled medical visit is in 4 hours, the Queen replied. By then we must have contacted my loyal council members and prepared to confront Dravek. Thalia knelt before her mother. The drugs in your system, can they be neutralized? Serafina gestured to a cabinet along one wall. There, cellular purifiers. They will accelerate my body's natural detoxification. While Thalia retrieved the medicine, Jim examined the room's features, particularly a central pedestal that appeared to be a communication or control system. Your Majesty, this facility, can it transmit to the council chamber? Indeed, Serafina confirmed. The sanctuary was designed as a final communication point in times of crisis. From here, I can address the entire citadel if necessary. As the Queen took the cellular purifier, Thalia offered Jim shared his tactical assessment. Dravek believes he has until tomorrow's council meeting to consolidate power. He doesn't know we've freed you or that we have evidence of his treason. That gives us the element of surprise but a narrow window to use it. What evidence do you bring, human? Serafina asked, her voice already stronger as the purifier counteracted Dravek's drugs. Jim deferred to Thalia, who produced a data crystal from her robes. Direct communications between Dravek and military commanders outlining plans to attack Earth unprovoked. Also records of his agents sabotaging diplomatic initiatives with 3 other developing worlds. And more damning, Jim added. I'm here, a human standing in the royal citadel, proving we're not the mindless savages Dravek has portrayed. Serafina's expression hardened with royal determination. Then we shall make our case before the full council and court. Not tomorrow as Dravek plans, but tonight at the diplomatic reception already underway. The Queen's sanctuary hummed with renewed energy as Serafina's strength returned. The cellular purifiers had worked efficiently, cleansing her system of Dravek's neural suppressants. She stood before a crystalline mirror, no longer the frail figure they had rescued, but a monarch of commanding presence, her golden-hued skin radiant with restored vitality. The diplomatic reception reaches its ceremonial peak in 40 minutes. She explained, securing an intricate diadem that seemed to capture and amplify light. Dravek must attend to absent himself would raise questions he cannot afford while his coup remains incomplete. Jim studied the holographic display Thalia had activated, showing the layout of the grand reception hall. His military mind assessed entry points, security positions, and potential choke points with practiced efficiency. If we appear at the height of the ceremony with all diplomatic delegations present, he observed, Dravek can't risk open conflict without exposing his true intentions to the galactic community. Thalia nodded, her silver eyes meeting Jim's. The element of surprise is our greatest advantage, but we'll have only moments to present our evidence before his forces react. The brief exchange carried unspoken weight. During their ordeal, a connection had formed between them, a bridge across species built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Jim found himself drawing strength from her presence, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his younger days in the service. My loyal counselors will stand with us, Serafina assured them. Once they see I am free and in command, the question remains how to enter undetected until the moment of revelation. Jim's decades of diplomatic functions during his Navy career provided the solution. The processional entrance, he suggested. Every major diplomatic function includes a formal entrance for distinguished guests. If we time our arrival to coincide with this processional, we can blend with legitimate delegations until we're already inside. Serafina's violet eyes regarded him with newfound respect. Astute observation, James Holt. The convergence processional begins shortly with representatives from 12 allied systems entering in order of treaty signing. We'll need appropriate attire, Thalia noted, particularly for Jim. His Earth clothing would immediately identify him. The Queen moved to a concealed compartment within the sanctuary, retrieving garments of flowing luminescent fabric. These ceremonial robes are worn by Royal Advisory Council members. They include hooded mantles that can temporarily conceal our identities. Jim accepted the garment, a robe of deep blue that shimmered with embedded constellations. The fabric was unlike anything on Earth, lighter than silk, but with structural integrity approaching Kevlar. He donned it over his clothing, surprised at how naturally it draped despite his human physiology. The sanctuary connects to ceremonial underchambers through passages known only to the royal family. Serafina explained, activating a hidden mechanism within the floor. A section of crystal parted silently, revealing a spiraling passage downward. From there, we can join the final diplomatic delegation, the myriad collective, who always arrive in varied numbers. As they prepared to depart, Thalia moved to Jim's side. Are you certain about this? She asked quietly. You've already risked everything for a world not your own. No one would fault you for remaining safely hidden. The concern in her voice touched him unexpectedly. I've spent my life in service, he replied. First to my country, then to humanity's reach for the stars. This is just the next mission. A dangerous one, she pressed, adjusting his ceremonial robe with careful hands that lingered momentarily on his shoulder. The best ones always are. He smiled, surprised by the warmth in her expression. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition that their alliance had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Their moment of connection was interrupted as Serafina completed her preparations. We must move now to intercept the processional at the optimal moment. They descended into ancient corridors that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence responding to Serafina's presence. The passage wound through the very heart of the citadel's supporting crystal matrix, occasionally offering glimpses into vast chambers of machinery or energy conduits that powered the floating city. After several minutes, they reached a juncture where the ancient passage intersected with more modern architecture. Serafina paused at a crystalline node that, when touched, rendered the wall before them transparent from their side. Beyond lay a ceremonial antechamber, where various diplomatic delegations gathered in their finery. The convergence procession assembles, the Queen observed. The myriad collective will enter last, following traditional order. Jim studied the diverse beings in the chamber, overwhelmed by the variety of life forms. Some appeared nearly human, while others defied conventional biology. Crystalline entities, energy beings contained within mechanized shells, amorphous creatures that shifted form continuously. I thought I was prepared for this, he murmured, but seeing so many different species. The galaxy teems with life, Serafina said simply. Earth is but one world among millions harboring intelligence. This is what Dravek fears, the unlimited potential of diversity. They waited as delegation after delegation proceeded through grand doors into the reception beyond. Finally, a group of varied beings assembled near the entrance, the myriad collective aptly named for the diverse worlds they represented. Now, Serafina whispered, activating another crystalline node. A section of wall slid aside, allowing them to step directly into the antechamber. They moved with purpose toward the myriad delegation hoods drawn forward to shadow their faces. The major domo, a tall astralis in ceremonial attire, approached. Myriad Collective, you will now process to the Grand Hall for presentation to the acting regent and assembled dignitaries. Jim felt a surge of anger at the title, acting regent, confirmation that Dravek had already begun positioning himself as Serafina's replacement. The queen herself remained impressively composed, giving no indication of her identity. The grand doors parted, revealing the breathtaking expanse of the reception hall. Crystal columns soared 50 meters upward to a ceiling that appeared open to space itself. Hundreds of diplomats and nobles stood in concentric circles around a central dais where Dravek addressed the assembly. He cut an imposing figure even from a distance. Taller than most Astralis, with broad shoulders and distinctively copper-toned skin, he wore militaristic regalia adorned with symbols of rank. His voice carried effortlessly through the vast space, resonant and authoritative, as he spoke of strengthening alliances and securing Astralis against emerging threats. The myriad delegation moved forward along a ceremonial pathway aligned with honor guards. Jim, Thalia, and Serafina remained in the middle of the group, using the varied heights and forms of the other diplomats to maintain concealment. As they approached the central dais, Jim observed Dravek more closely. The commander's confidence was evident in his posture and expression, the assurance of a man who believed victory already secured. The major domo announced the myriad collective, and the delegation halted. Protocol dictated that each representative bow in acknowledgement of Astralis leadership. As delegates performed this ritual, one by one, Serafina whispered final instructions. When the last delegate completes their bow, I will step forward. Thalia, be prepared to project the evidence. James, stay close. Your presence is our most powerful testament. The final myriad representative, a being composed of interlocking crystalline segments, completed their acknowledgement. In that moment of transition, Serafina moved with regal purpose, throwing back her hood to reveal her face and diadem. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly as recognition spread. Dravek himself froze mid-gesture, his copper eyes widening in shock and quickly concealed fear. Supreme Commander, Serafina's voice rang clear and powerful. I believe you occupy my place. The silence that followed was absolute. Hundreds of diplomats and nobles stood motionless, witnessing What many immediately understood was a pivotal moment in Astralis history. Security forces stationed throughout the hall shifted uncertainly, caught between conflicting chains of command. Drevek recovered quickly, his expression smoothing into one of concerned relief. "Your Majesty," he addressed Serafina, voice pitched to Carrie. "We feared for your health. Medical reports indicated you required extended isolation." He gestured to subordinates. "Please escort the Queen to her chambers, where treatment can resume." Guards moved forward, but hesitated when Thalia stepped to her mother's side, also revealing her identity. "The Queen requires no treatment, Commander. Only justice for your treason." Princess Thalia, Drevek maintained his diplomatic facade, though Jim noted the subtle tensing of his posture. "Your unauthorized departure caused great concern. I see you've returned, though your appearance here violates all protocols." "Protocols," Serafina's voice cut like crystal, "do not supersede royal authority. Stand down, Commander Drevek." Drevek glanced at his personal guards who had moved closer, hands on weapons. He calculated the risks of open defiance against the optics of respecting royal authority, at least temporarily. With practiced diplomacy, he bowed slightly. "Of course, Your Majesty, I serve at your pleasure. I merely acted in your best interest during your incapacity." "My incapacity," Serafina's tone hardened, "was engineered by your order. Neural suppressants administered under guise of medical treatment, an act of direct treason." Murmurs spread through the assembly as several council members moved closer, their expressions revealing divided loyalties. "Serious accusations require evidence, Your Majesty," Drevek responded smoothly. "Perhaps this discussion would be better conducted in council chambers rather than before our honored diplomatic guests." It was the opening they needed. Thalia stepped forward. "Evidence we have brought from Earth itself." At this cue, Jim lowered his hood and stepped forward. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Gasps and exclamations echoed throughout the hall as diplomats recognized a completely new species in their midst. Drevek's control slipped momentarily, naked fury flashing across his features before he mastered himself. "A human," he stated flatly. "You've brought an undeveloped species representative into the Citadel, a violation of quarantine protocols that threatens all present." Jim spoke, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command experience. "I am James Holt of Earth. I stand before you not as a threat, but as living proof of Commander Drevek's deception." Serafina seized the moment. "Honored delegates, council members, citizens of Astralis, before judgment, witness the evidence." She nodded to Thalia, who activated the data crystal. The central display shifted to reveal recorded communications. Drevek's own image appeared, speaking to his military commanders. "Earth's technological development accelerates beyond predicted models. Within a century, they will achieve interstellar capability. We cannot risk another expansionist species in our sphere of influence. The elimination protocol must proceed before they become a genuine threat." Further recordings showed Drevek instructing covert operations to sabotage diplomatic initiatives with 3 developing worlds, all while falsifying reports to the Queen and Council. Throughout the presentation, Jim watched Drevek closely. The commander's expression remained impassive, but subtle indicators, tightening jaw muscles. Controlled breathing revealed growing tension. More concerning was how he subtly signaled to guards stationed throughout the hall. When the evidence concluded, Serafina addressed the assembly. "Commander Drevek planned unprovoked aggression against a developing world, a direct violation of our most sacred covenant as a spacefaring civilization. He conspired to usurp royal authority through medical manipulation, betraying his oath to me and to all Astralis." Several council members moved to stand with the Queen, their positions making clear their allegiance. Others remained uncertain, looking between Serafina and Drevek as they assessed shifting power dynamics. Drevek recognized his diplomatic position had become untenable. His expression hardened as he abandoned pretense. "Your Majesty has been misled by romantic notions of peaceful coexistence. Earth represents an existential threat, a primitive, violent species already experimenting with nuclear weapons and planetary-scale destruction." He gestured toward Jim. "This specimen stands here within our sacred citadel, proof of how easily they infiltrate. Their adaptability, their aggressive expansion, these are not virtues, but dangers. I acted to protect Astralis as my oath demands." "By plotting genocide," Jim challenged, stepping forward. by planning to destroy an entire world of billions who don't even know you exist. Preemptive security, Dravek countered. A concept your own military understands well human. Your history is written in the blood of preemptive actions. Our history, Jim acknowledged, includes mistakes and atrocities, but also learning from them. Growth, that's what you fear most, not our weapons, but our potential to surpass you. The exchange was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the hall's entrance. Military personnel in Dravek's elite guard uniforms poured in, weapons drawn. Simultaneously, the commander's personal guards moved to surround him protectively. Enough discussion, Dravek declared. The security of Astralis supersedes procedural niceties. Queen Seraphina is clearly compromised by alien influence. As Supreme Commander, I invoke emergency protocols to assume temporary governance until the Council can formally assess the situation. You invoke nothing, a distinguished Astralis stepped forward from among the Council members. High Counselor Thalon, he introduced himself. Commander Dravek, your actions constitute military insurrection against the Crown. Stand down immediately. Dravek's response was swift and decisive. Secure the Queen and Princess, he ordered his guards. Detain the human for biological containment. Any who interfere will be considered accomplices to treason. The diplomatic reception dissolved into chaos as guards moved to obey, while loyal nobles and counselors rallied around the Queen. Jim leaned close to Thalia and Seraphina. We need defensive position. Any secondary exits? Seraphina indicated a nearly invisible door behind a crystalline column. Royal evacuation route. Only royal biosignatures can activate it. Their path to the evacuation point was complicated by chaos in the hall. They moved with purpose but without running, which would immediately draw attention. Several loyal counselors provided inadvertent cover their heated arguments, with Dravek's supporters creating distractions. They had nearly reached the hidden exit when a squad of elite guards intercepted them, weapons raised. Halt by order of the Supreme Commander, the lead guard commanded. Jim stepped instinctively in front of the Queen and Princess. Thalia moved beside him, the royal scepter she carried now humming with activated energy. Lower your weapons, Seraphina ordered. You stand against your rightful queen. The guards hesitated, conditioning to respect royal authority, conflicting with immediate orders. That moment of uncertainty was all Thalia needed. The scepter in her hand discharged a pulse of energy that rippled outward, disrupting neural patterns. The guards collapsed unconscious, but unharmed. The scepter has limited charges, the Leia cautioned. We must reach the evacuation route quickly. They continued toward the hidden exit, but their encounter with the guards had drawn attention. Dravek himself noticed their movement and shouted new orders. More guards converged from multiple directions. Seraphina reached the crystalline column, first pressing her arm against a seemingly solid section. The crystal recognized her royal biosignature, revealing a previously invisible doorway. Quickly, she urged. Thalia entered first, followed by her mother. Jim moved to follow, but stopped as he noticed a guard raising an energy weapon toward the Queen's back. Without hesitation, he threw himself into the line of fire, tackling the guard as the weapon discharged. The energy blast struck the ceiling, shattering a crystal formation that rained fragments onto the floor below. Jim grappled with the guard, his decades of military training compensating somewhat for his age. He managed to disarm his opponent, but 3 more guards approached rapidly. His position was untenable. Jim, Thalia called from the doorway, raising her scepter to provide covering fire. Go, he shouted back. Get the Queen to safety. Complete the mission. He could see the conflict in Thalia's expression, duty to her mother versus loyalty to her ally. For a moment, her composure broke. I won't leave you, she insisted, something deeper than alliance in her tone. You must, Jim countered, engaging another approaching guard. Earth depends on you both. Go. Their eyes met one final time, volumes of unspoken meaning passing between them before military pragmatism won out. Thalia nodded once, understanding the necessary sacrifice, and sealed the evacuation route. Jim turned to face Dravek's approaching guards, weaponless but defiant. He had accomplished his primary objective. Earth's best defenders were safely retreating to gather loyalist forces. His capture was an acceptable tactical loss. The guards surrounded him, weapons trained on vital areas. Surrender, human, their leader commanded. Jim raised his hand slowly. I surrender to lawful authority of the Queen, not to mutineers. They secured him with energy restraints and marched him back toward the central dais where Dravek was attempting to restore order. Many diplomats had fled while Australis nobles had divided into clear factions, those supporting the queen and those backing Dravek. The infiltrator, Dravek observed coldly as Jim was brought before him. Where have the queen and princess gone? Jim met his gaze steadily. To rally forces loyal to legitimate authority. Your coup has failed, Commander. Dravek studied him with clinical detachment. Interesting. Your species displays remarkable confidence, even in defeat. He addressed the guards. Take him to Command Center Alpha. I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with before proceeding against his world. As the guards moved to comply, the entire hall shuddered. Crystal chandeliers swayed and fissures appeared in decorative columns. A resonant tone like the striking of an immense bell echoed throughout the citadel. The Royal Defense Protocol, one of Dravek's advisors exclaimed. It's been activated. Dravek's expression darkened. Impossible. That system requires the combined biosignatures of Queen and Princess from the Sovereign Chamber. Jim allowed himself a smile, which is exactly where they're heading. Another tremor shook the hall stronger than the first. Dravek barked orders into his communication device demanding situation reports. The responses clearly troubled him, his copper eyes narrowing with each update. Loyalist forces have secured the central spire and energy core, an officer reported. Military communications are being overridden by royal authority codes. The protocol was designed for external threats, Dravek snapped. It cannot distinguish between loyal forces and traitors, Jim suggested. Seems like a design feature, not a flaw. Dravek regarded him with cold fury. You understand nothing of our systems, human. I understand power struggles, Jim replied evenly. I've seen coups across my world. They usually end with legitimate authority restored and conspirators facing justice. The citadel shuddered a third time and the massive display above the dais activated independently. Queen Seraphina's face appeared, her expression resolute and commanding. Citizens of Australis, loyal defenders of the realm, her voice resonated throughout the entire citadel. Supreme Commander Dravek has attempted a military coup against the crown. All loyal forces are hereby ordered to stand down and disavow his illegal commands. Dravek's personal guards exchanged uncertain glances. The commander himself remained outwardly composed, though Jim noted the subtle indicators of escalating stress, increased respiration, micro-expressions of calculation. A desperate ploy, Dravek announced to those remaining. The Queen's judgment has been compromised by alien influence. His words found decreasing purchase as another announcement followed Seraphina's. High Counselor Thalon appeared on the display, his ancient face solemn. The High Council has convened an emergency session and confirms Queen Seraphina's authority. Commander Dravek's actions are deemed unconstitutional and in violation of sworn oaths. All military and security personnel are ordered to recognize royal authority or face immediate dismissal and prosecution. Throughout the hall, guards lowered their weapons. Several of Dravek's elite guards stepped back, unwilling to oppose both Crown and Council. The commander found himself increasingly isolated as supporters melted away, reading the shifting political winds. Dravek assessed his deteriorating position with military calculation. His expression hardened as he reached a decision. The protocols were designed to defend Australis against threats. The human presence proves my assessment correct. Earth is already infiltrating our highest levels of government. He activated his personal communication device, bypassing the compromised central system. Execute contingency Omega. Authorization Dravek primary. Jim recognized the tone of a final desperate command. What have you done? He demanded. Secured our future, Dravek replied simply. My battlecruiser maintains position outside Council authority. Its weapons are now locked on Earth's coordinates. If I do not countermand in 1 hour, your world burns. The revelation sent a chill through Jim. Everything there escaped the evidence. The Queen's restoration meant nothing if Earth still faced destruction. You'd condemn billions out of spite because you lost a political struggle. I act to protect Australis as I always have. Dravek maintained. The threat Earth poses remains regardless of who sits on the throne. The hall's main doors burst open as royal guards streamed in, led by Princess Thalia. They quickly secured the space, disarming remaining loyalists to Dravek. The commander himself stood unresisting as Thalia approached, her expression fierce. Supreme Commander Dravek, you are arrested for high treason against the crown, she announced formally. Your victory is hollow, Princess, he replied calmly. Earth's fate is sealed unless I personally countermand the strike order. Thalia's eyes widened slightly as she grasped his meaning. She turned to Jim, who confirmed with a grim nod. He's ordered his battle cruiser to destroy Earth if he doesn't cancel the command within the hour. A simple choice, Dravek continued. My freedom and a formal end to investigations in exchange for your world's survival. Jim felt the weight of billions of lives pressing upon his shoulders. Before he could speak, Queen Seraphina entered the hall, flanked by council members and royal guards. She approached with measured steps, her authority absolute. Commander Dravek, your final act of desperation confirms the weakness of your position and character. Dravek maintained his composure. Your Majesty knows the terms. The lives of an entire primitive world against the inconvenience of one Astralis commander. Seraphina's violet eyes revealed nothing of her thoughts as she considered the ultimatum. Jim stepped forward, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty, if I may speak. At her nod, he continued. Commander Dravek believes he holds ultimate leverage, but his understanding is flawed. He assumes the battlecruiser crew will execute his final order even after his arrest for treason has been publicly announced. Jim turned to face Dravek directly. Military personnel follow chain of command, but their ultimate loyalty is to legitimate authority and lawful orders. Once your treason is communicated to your battlecruiser commander, along with direct orders from the Queen, how many will choose to follow the disgraced orders of an arrested traitor? Uncertainty flickered across Dravek's features, the first genuine crack in his confident facade. Jim pressed the advantage. Furthermore, the crew must know they would face universal condemnation for destroying an inhabited world without provocation, not just from Astralis, but from every civilized species represented in today's assembly. Seraphina nodded thoughtfully. A sound analysis, James Holt. She addressed the assembly. Open a direct channel to battlecruiser Indomitable. The central display shifted to show the bridge of the warship. A startled officer appeared, clearly surprised to receive direct communication from the Queen. Commander Velex, Seraphina addressed the officer formally. You have received illegal orders from former Supreme Commander Dravek, who has been arrested for high treason. These orders to attack the planet Earth are hereby countermanded by royal decree. The officer began to bow, but his image suddenly distorted and vanished, replaced by static. Dravek's expression shifted to one of grim satisfaction. Not so simple, Your Majesty, he said. Contingency Omega includes communication lockout. Only my personal command codes can re-establish contact with the Indomitable. He's lying, Thalia asserted, but doubt flickered in her eyes. I assure you I am not, Dravek replied. The battlecruiser is now operating under sealed orders with automatic execution. Unless I transmit the cancellation codes personally, Earth will be reduced to molten slag. Jim met Seraphina's eyes, understanding passing between them. This was the true test not just of their resolve, but of their values. Would they sacrifice one world to punish a traitor? There must be another way to contact the ship, Jim insisted, turning to the assembled council members. Surely Astralis has emergency protocols override systems. High Counselor Thalon stepped forward. There is one possibility. The Royal Command override, but it requires physical presence at the central communications spire and direct quantum entanglement with the vessel. Then that's our move, Jim stated with military decisiveness. Not so fast, Dravek interjected. The override requires a specific authentication sequence known only to me. We return to the same solution, my freedom for your world's survival. Thalia moved closer to Jim, her hand brushing his arm in a gesture of solidarity. There's another option, she said quietly. I could attempt to extract the codes directly from his neural pathways. Jim understood immediately. Mind reading, is that possible? Possible but dangerous, she replied, for both subject and practitioner. It's forbidden except in cases of extreme necessity. Billions of lives qualify as necessity, Jim stated grimly. Dravek had overheard their exchange, his copper eyes narrowing. Neural extraction is prohibited by our most ancient laws. The Queen herself cannot authorize such a violation. The law provides exception for prevention of planetary-scale atrocity, Seraphine countered, which you have set in motion, Commander. For the first time, genuine fear crossed Dravek's face. You would risk destroying my mind to save a primitive world, to save innocent lives. Serafina corrected. I would risk far more. She turned to her daughter. Princess Thalia, as royal adept, you are authorized to attempt neural extraction. Thalia stepped forward, her expression solemn. I will require assistance to stabilize the connection. Someone with whom I share significant neural resonance. Her eyes turned to Jim. Someone like you, James Holt. Jim blinked in surprise. Me, I'm not even the same species. Yet our minds have aligned through shared purpose, and she hesitated, something vulnerable in her silver eyes. Deeper connection. I believe you can anchor me during the extraction. The implications stunned Jim. Their bond had grown stronger than he'd realized, strong enough for her to trust him with her mind during a dangerous psychic procedure. The moment held weight beyond the immediate crisis. I'll do whatever's needed, he agreed softly. Guards secured Drevek in a crystalline containment field while Thalia prepared for the extraction. Jim stood beside her as she explained his role. I will enter a trance state to access Drevek's neural pathways, she said. Your task is to maintain physical contact with me throughout. Your presence will serve as my anchor to reality. What are the risks? Jim asked, concern evident. If I become lost in his consciousness, I could suffer neural collapse, she admitted. That is why I need you. Our connection will guide me back. The procedure began with Thalia placing her hands on either side of Drevek's head. Jim stood behind her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders as instructed. The moment contact was established, a visible energy field enveloped all three, connecting their neural systems. Jim felt an immediate disorientation, echoes of thoughts, not his own, flashes of memories from alien worlds. He focused on Thalia, on their shared experiences, maintaining the lifeline she needed. Through their connection, he sensed her navigating the treacherous landscape of Drevek's mind, searching for the crucial codes. The commander resisted, his face contorted with effort as he attempted to block the extraction. Sweat beaded on Thalia's brow as she pushed deeper, the strain of the mental battle evident. Jim tightened his grip on her shoulders, pouring all his strength and will into supporting her. I can't locate them, Thalia gasped. He's buried them too deeply. Focus on the battle cruiser itself, Jim suggested, instinct guiding him. Not the codes, but his connection to the ship. Thalia adjusted her approach, following Jim's insight. Moments later, her expression cleared. I have it, not the cancellation codes, but something better. The quantum frequency of the Indomitable's command channel. She broke contact with Drevek, who slumped in exhaustion. The neural bridge dissolved, leaving Jim momentarily dizzy as his consciousness fully returned to his own body. Thalia turned to him, gratitude in her eyes. Your suggestion was perfect, she said. With the quantum frequency, we can establish direct communication regardless of lockout protocols. They rushed to the communications spire, a critical race against time, with less than 15 minutes remaining before the attack on Earth. The spire housed Astralis' most powerful quantum transmitters, capable of instantaneous communication across vast distances. Thalia input the frequency she had extracted from Drevek's mind, while technicians prepared the quantum array. Jim paced anxiously, aware that every passing second brought Earth closer to potential destruction. Connection established, a technician announced finally. The display activated, showing the bridge of the Indomitable once more. Commander Velix appeared, his expression guarded. This channel is restricted, he began, then stopped short upon recognizing the Queen. Serafina stepped forward. Commander Velix, I address you directly through quantum entanglement, bypassing all communication blocks. Supreme Commander Drevek has been arrested for high treason. His orders regarding Earth are hereby countermanded with the full authority of the Crown and Council. Velix hesitated, clearly torn between conflicting loyalties. Your Majesty, we receive sealed orders with Drevek's highest authentication. The targeting sequence has already been locked in. Jim moved into view. Commander, I am James Holt of Earth. The world you're preparing to destroy is home to billions of innocent beings who have no knowledge of Astralis or interstellar politics. Would you become the greatest mass murderer in galactic history on the orders of a proven traitor? His words struck home. Velix's professional demeanor wavered. I have sworn oaths. To protect Astralis, Jim finished in for him. Not to commit genocide based on one man's fears. What future would Australis have if known throughout the galaxy as destroyers of developing civilizations? The commander looked at Queen Seraphina. If I stand down the attack, what assurance do I have that my crew won't face prosecution for following issued orders? You have my royal word, Seraphina replied without hesitation. Those who correct course when presented with truth demonstrate the highest integrity. Long seconds passed as Velix considered. Finally, he nodded. Targeting sequence aborted. Weapon systems powering down. He bowed formally to the Queen. The Indomitable awaits your further commands, Your Majesty. Relief washed over Jim like a physical force. Earth would live billions of humans, continuing their lives unaware how close they had come to extinction. He found himself steadied by Thalia's hand on his arm, her touch conveying understanding of the emotional weight he carried. Thank you, he said simply, words inadequate for the moment. Earth is safe, she confirmed softly. Your mission is complete, James Holt. In the days that followed, order was fully restored to Australis. Dravek faced trial before the High Council, his crimes laid bare for all to witness. The sentence was severe but merciful: permanent exile to a research outpost on the edge of Australis territory, his military rank and privileges stripped away. More significant were the policy changes that emerged from the crisis. Queen Seraphina, with Council support, initiated a comprehensive review of non-interference protocols regarding developing worlds. Recent events have demonstrated the flaws in our policy of complete isolation, she announced in a historic address. Fear thrives in ignorance on both sides. With appropriate cautions, controlled contact with promising civilizations, including Earth, offers greater security than perpetual separation. This led to Jim's final audience with the Queen and Princess in the royal chambers. He stood before them no longer in borrowed ceremonial robes, but in his own Earth clothing, now cleaned and repaired. James Holt. Seraphina addressed him formally. You have rendered unprecedented service to both your world and ours. The Council has approved my recommendation for a new approach to Earth, controlled limited contact, to establish peaceful relations. And who better to serve as first ambassador to Earth, Thalia added, stepping forward, than someone who has already bridged our worlds. Jim understood their meaning immediately. Me, an ambassador. Who more appropriate? Seraphina asked. You've proven your courage, wisdom, and commitment to peace. You understand Earth's perspective while having experienced Australis firsthand. The proposal was unexpected but deeply appealing. Jim considered his life on Earth, the quiet retirement, the isolation, the feeling that his greatest contributions were behind him. Here was an opportunity to serve humanity in a way no one else could, guiding Earth's first steps into a vast interstellar community. I would be honored, Your Majesty, he replied, though convincing my government might be challenging. We will proceed carefully, Seraphina assured him. Initial contact through appropriate channels, verification of our peaceful intentions, gradual introduction to the wider galactic community. As formal arrangements were concluded, Thalia requested a private moment with Jim before his departure. They stood on a balcony overlooking the crystal sea, twin suns setting in spectacular refractions through the crystalline landscape. You're returning to Earth as something more than you were, she observed, studying his profile in the fading light. An old man with an impossible story and an alien communication device. Jim smiled wryly. I suspect I'll need all my diplomatic skills just to avoid psychiatric evaluation. You'll succeed, Thalia said with certainty, just as you did here. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Finally, Jim turned to face her directly. During the neural extraction, when our minds connected, I felt something beyond alliance or friendship. Talia's silver eyes met his, no longer guarded. Neural resonance reveals truth that words often cannot. Our species may differ, but some connections transcend such boundaries. I'm twice your age, even by Earth standards, Jim pointed out. By Australis reckoning, we are both barely adults, she countered with a slight smile. I will live for centuries, James Holt. Perhaps our paths will cross many times in your remaining decades. As ambassador, I suspect I'll have reason to visit Australis regularly, he replied, hope warming his voice. I would welcome that, Thalia said softly. She stepped closer, pressing something into his hand, a small crystal pendant on a silver chain. A communication token, should you ever need to reach me directly rather than through formal channels. Jim accepted the gift, understanding its significance went far beyond diplomatic convenience. I'll keep it close. As the royal transport prepared for his return journey to Earth, Jim Holt, engineer, soldier explorer, and now diplomat, embraced his new mission with the same determination that had carried him through a lifetime of service. Earth's future among the stars would begin with the return of an unlikely ambassador, an ordinary man who had journeyed farther than any human in history to save his world and found his greatest purpose in the process. The stars that had once seemed so distant now represented connections rather than isolation, a universe far grander and more welcoming than humanity had dared imagine. And among those stars, one world in particular would always draw his gaze and his heart, where a silver-skinned princess with violet eyes awaited his return.